Hello and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Brit Smith. In these cold winter months, nothing is better than enjoying a warm drink by the fire, except maybe if that warm drink is infused with your favorite strain of cannabis. For many people, cannabis-infused drinks are an alternative to alcohol, and for others, it can be an addition. There are several ways that we can enjoy pre-made weed drinks. If you're in a state with legal marijuana, you can get one of the many canned seltzer drinks at your local dispensary, or you can buy some of the additives like specially infused liquid drops or powders that are designed to go right into whatever you're already drinking. Alternatively, you could do it yourself by decarboxylating the cannabis flower, which means you gently heat it and activate the THC, and you infuse that into a butter that dissolves in your drinks. But how do we add cannabis into our drinks without ruining the flavor or getting ourselves way too high or not quite toasty enough? This week, we're going to learn a bit of apothecary-style cannabis drink mixology with the help of our guest, best known as the cocktail whisperer, Warren Bobrow. Warren is a cannabis mixologist who has written 6 books on cocktails and mocktails. He's the CEO of Klaus the Gnome, the California-based drink line with a new THC cocktail called the Mezzarole. And he has created the most delicious cannabis cocktail recipe, the Applesauce and Cannabutter hot chocolate, which can be found on page 74 of the fall issue of Different Leaf the magazine, which you can now order at differentleaf.com. We'll be right back to chat about Dank drinks with Warren Bobrow. Today I want to pick your brain, Warren, about cannabis and drinks. So we're going to talk about cocktails, we're going to talk about chemistry, alchemy, alcoholic, non-alcoholic. Let's talk about your background first. What inspired you to start mixing weed and drinks?
It really goes back to the early apothecary. I've written books like Bitters and Shrubs Syrup Cocktails, which dealt with early drinks from the early apothecary and how would you keep things fresh in the days before refrigeration. And of course, my first book, Apothecary Cocktails, was based loosely on healing by method of alcohol and herbs and spices and how people have been drinking and healing in Europe for hundreds of years. You know, it's new to our shores here in the United States. So when people emigrated here from places like Switzerland or Austria or France or Germany, places where herbal liqueurs and potions, they did a little more than just heal you. They got you drunk as well. So pharmacies were a popular place to hang around.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh, that's interesting. I mean, being from England, I knew somewhat about the beer culture because a lot of folks would drink beer back then to get their calories.
Yes.
Stay hydrated as well.
Especially children with a little Guinness on your gums when they're teething. My mother did that for me. I know that.
Yeah, my mom did it for me, but it was brandy on the gums for ours.
Yeah, well, you know.
But even now, like, you know, the British drinking culture is really something that you have to witness. I mean, it's separate to have the drinking culture in the pubs when the soccer is on versus when the soccer is off.
I've been many times. My family was in the patent pharmaceutical industry, which probably allows me to be able to say what's snake oil and what isn't. So we made snake oil. And I think there's no hiding behind the veneer of success. The products were snake oil. So my grandfather was fined the largest amount in U.S. history to date at that time in the 50s and 60s for manufacturing snake oil. He made a product called Geritol, which was supposed to help your body with iron poor blood, which he said everyone had, but in fact, no one had. Iron poor anemia is something that women suffer with early in life. It's not a late in life thing. All this product was essentially whiskey. It was ethyl alcohol, caramel coloring, and flavorings. And I've written a book called Whiskey Cocktails, so I'm pretty familiar with what whiskey is.
Oh my God.
This was whiskey sold in pharmacies exactly out of the early, it was like the modern day pharmacy, but reinventing the early apothecary. And that's my family. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so those are your folks. That's why you're interested in.
My father was the head of the tax division, late father, my grandfather, and he made a fortune for himself by making products that he said everyone needed, but really it was no more than whiskey.
Wow, that is an incredible story. So you've done many, many years in the bar and mixology sort of world.
And still do. Yeah, I still bartend, maybe not necessarily in bars, but I do private parties. And I love it. It's fabulous.
Nice. So what's your favorite stuff to make right now?
Oh my gosh, my favorite stuff. I've got to be really careful because I have a legal product on the market in California. Here it is. It's called Klaus. It's named for my gnome who is not with me today. He's still back in New Jersey. This is a wonderful product. This is something really interesting, not a seltzer, something a craft cocktail
In a
in a can
can.
with THC, but no alcohol. I
Hmm.
don't drink anymore. I haven't had a drink since July of 2018 when I was down at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans, pickling myself and everyone else who came in my way, and put down my Hemingway, which was my favorite drink at the time, and never drank again. It
Well,
was just like that.
congratulations to you.
Uh,
I am Cali sober. I stick with the cannabis plant. That's my option. I had a long relationships with beer, wine, liquor. Those
I
are
still drink wine and beer. I enjoy it. I believe if you follow beer and wine, you have a pretty good understanding of history. I understand what my body needs and what it doesn't need, and it doesn't need distilled liquor, and I haven't had any distilled liquor. But I do appreciate a glass of wine with dinner, and I do appreciate a glass of beer in the afternoon, just because. That's really all I'm taking. I haven't gotten drunk in years and no hangovers in almost 5 years.
and that's a
And
beautiful thing about cannabis, isn't it? No
yeah,
hang.
and creating cannabis cocktails is really a gift. It's not like a get high quick seltzer, bubbles to the brain kind of product. It's really something that's meant to be contemplated and enjoyed and cheered on with food. And Klaus's the Mesrol, which is this drink here, named for Louis Armstrong's weed dealer during the jazz era, Mesro. Mesrol is a combination of rice vinegar, mirin from Japan, but it's the dry rice vinegar. So this drink has only 16 calories and 0.6 of a gram of sugar. Very, very
Love that.
refreshing and fresh. So the base is the rice vinegar. We also use a extra hot and spicy ginger syrup. So it's made in a Great Britain sort of Jamaican style ginger beer syrup.
Mm.
And then the final ingredient is from France. It's a lime puree that I use from little tiny Caribbean limes. They're very oily and pungent.
How did you
Well,
come up with this recipe? What
well,
did you go through?
well, I'm a chef, and I wrote the book Cannabis Cocktails, Mocktails, and Tonics, and this is one of the drinks out of the book. It happens to contain in the book rum agricole, which is from Martinique. It's made with freshly pressed sugarcane juice instead of molasses, which most rum is made of molasses, and molasses is inherently poisonous. I'm not saying that sugarcane juice is any less poisonous, but it's less harsh. It's more perfumed in its flavor. But of course, Klaus doesn't have any alcohol in it. Just I shouldn't say just, it's a product that's manufactured from a company called Vertosa. They're dream weavers. They take ideas and they weave them into products.
Oh,
And the
that's nice.
product that they wove for me is with the strain called Hippie Crasher. And what Hippie Crasher is, it's an indica leaning hybrid. So it gives you the benefit of the sativa uplift, the talkative ability of when it starts to wear off a little bit, and then the indica aspect bears into the flavor profile, giving you the most relaxing experience. And at the end of the night, the best night's sleep you've had in years.
Well, it sounds like there was a lot of thought that went into the alchemy behind this
Oh,
drink.
yes, very
Yeah.
much. I consider myself a cannabis alchemist. I think one of my early business cards says that I'm a mixologist and cannabis alchemist.
What a cool title you have. Let's talk about folks that want to start learning how to infuse or involve cannabis in their other drinks. What would you say would be some of the rookie mistakes, like flavor, heat,
Yeah,
overdosing, those kinds of things?
yeah. Before there were the technology solutions like we have today, like the Levo 2 or the magical butter machine, you were really forced to do things the quote unquote old fashioned way. I'm fortunate, I'm trained to be a saucier. I understand soup stocks and sauces and what goes into fine culinary techniques. And, using the use of good ingredients, simply prepared with love. I want to make them with beautiful ingredients, fresh ingredients, never canned or bottled ingredients. Stuff like that it's just really important to me to be authentic.
Yeah.
Craft.
It's pretty easy for folks to learn how to start to mix sort of whether it's alcohol or non-alcoholic ingredients with cannabis if they just sort of stick to a recipe to start.
Actually, no. My drinks in the book, Cannabis Cocktails, are extraordinarily strong. They're 250 milligrams. So I would recommend not following the volumes to a T, because I wrote the book for medical use, not recreational use. And I don't think people who are using cannabis for recreational uses are necessarily at that mindset where they can take a drink that's 250 milligrams. It's just not going to be. Especially since you're mixing alcohol and THC together in that context, not in my drink, not in the work that I do now. But this book, I took the tack of what we call a crossfade. So it's the experience of drinking alcohol, adding to it incredibly concentrated potions that include THC.
Is that from a tincture? Is that the best way to add?
No, not at all. Tincture would be out of balance and bitter. This is an actual infusion. So I decarb the cannabis in the oven, 240 some odd degrees for 35 to 45 minutes, completely covered up. Or that was the old fashioned way. The new way that I use is I take the Ardent. It's a product called Ardent, and I stick a bunch of weed in it and close up the silicone cap and turn it on, and it's perfectly decarbed. We didn't have that solution when I first started making drinks.
Isn't that great?
I have a Levo 2 now, and I've been doing infusing maple syrup for pancakes, stony pancakes, and then take that maple syrup and weave it into a Sazerac with absinthe and Calvados, which is French apple brandy.
Nice. So you take the decarbed cannabis and you either mix it with like a syrup or a butter or something that you can add to a drink.
You can do that, yes, or you can physically infuse the cannabis into the alcohol.
Now we're toying with something that's a little more dangerous, mixing alcohol and cannabis.
Absolutely dangerous. I appeared on Vice and I destroyed them on live TV by making a punch with something like 2,800 milligrams of THC. And I told them the two words missing in the English language are common sense. You don't have 5 drinks. I said, please don't have 5 drinks. But the water was under the bridge by that point.
What is your favorite strain of cannabis to mix with, and what is your favorite cocktail to mix it with, alcoholic?
My favorite strains are outdoor grown, living soil, biodynamic, organic, sustainable at least. So it's tough to put it on call, but there's one, Sunset Mountain Farm. I think it's their blueberry muffin. I just love that. It just smells fresh and spicy, like those low bush blueberries that you get up in Maine. It's really tart. So what I like to do is there's a product called Bluet. It's a méthode champenoise made from blueberries, Maine wild blueberries. And I've infused that with THC in my Levo. Wow. It's really cool. So you make blueberry champagne with weed in it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It is good.
What can you expect as an effect from that kind of thing when you're mixing cannabis and alcohol together?
Everyone's different. That's the whole thing with cannabis. Everyone is different, and everyone's biochemistry is different. What affects me, because, I have glaucoma, so I use weed all the time. I smoke all the time. It kills my wife. She hates it. She's saying, like, why do you smoke so much? Oh, you just smoked. And I said, well, I have a headache. I need to. So, but the fact is, everyone's different, and what affects me might totally destroy the person who's right next to me. So I say less is more, and start with a tiny little bit, even if it's a thimble, and see how that affects you. Because you can't drink along with the alcoholics. They're drinking 3 drinks in 15 minutes. If you do that, you're going to be under the table.
Yeah. When it comes to mixing cannabis with non-alcoholic beverages, sort of mocktails, I know that you like to create recipes that will go with the season. So for Different Leaf Next magazine, you've created the Applesauce and Cannabutter recipe. Why did you like this one? Why did you pick it?
I love seasonality in fruit. At a typical American supermarket, you can buy food from all over the world. So we've lost that seasonality. You can buy peaches in January. You can buy blood oranges in March. They used to only come out in the wintertime. They didn't come out in the spring. And then the fruit would be a late summer fantasy. You'd have great peaches at the end of the summer. Now you can get them all during the year because they're grown all over the world. So I like to play with products that are local. I like to work with things that I have bought at local farms or even grown them myself. It's been a long time since I've grown apples. I grew up on a farm that had apple orchards, but it's been a long time. But I like using ingredients that are surrounding the place that I'm from and the place that I live, which is Northwest New Jersey.
Nice.
So we have you just have great flavors that surround us. I mean, all it takes is a creative mind. There's a billion cookbooks out there, and just open them and point.
What are some of your favorite ingredients to mix with the cannabis drinks that you make?
Alcoholic, I love Foursquare rum because I know it's made well. I know the people involved and I respect them. I worked with some companies from Jamaica, Long Pond, Worthy Park, Money Musk. They do those rums that they call dunder rums. So they've got a real distinctive, funky flavor. I absolutely adore them. But again, I haven't tasted them. And it's just the idea of smelling it is strange at this point. But that's just from not drinking, I'm sure. Some of the other products I love just using brown spirits because when you're doing an infusion, the color is greenish yellow and it doesn't look palatable. If you're doing gin or vodka, it doesn't look good in the glass. So a dark rum or some type of spirit. Mezcal, probably not, because again, it's going to, even though those smoky flavors are great, but then I would recommend someone to use like an Islay Scotch whiskey, infuse some like Lafroig or Lagavulin or Bruichladdich.
There's so much to think about when it comes to like flavors and smells when you're drinking. And there's also a lot of flavors and smells when you're smelling weed, a lot of the terpenes.
Yeah, the terpenes, of course.
So have you learned about sort of mixing the certain terpenes with certain flavors and drinks?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did with Klaus, with the Mesrol, and that's what we're doing with the next two SKUs coming forward. It's all in the terpenes. We're terpene forward, and I wanted to make a drink that just didn't just say THC on it. I wanted it to actually taste and smell like the plant. Isn't that why we're in this industry? I mean, you could just say you have THC, but again, you mentioned the word tincture. Tincture is not in my vocabulary. That it's not like using cocktail bitters. The stuff is really seriously awful. It would destroy your drink. Either made with glycerin or grain alcohol, and why would you introduce flavors like that into a carefully made craft cocktail? It would ruin the balance.
So that's a really good point. So when you're first making some sort of infused drink, do not just grab whatever already has cannabis infused into it and dump it in there.
It's always, it's pretty precise. I mean, that's why we have measurers. We have little jiggers that if I say it's 0.25, you don't use 1.0.
Is there some sort of milligrams of THC to glasses of wine or shots of liquor?
Everything is up for grabs in that because everyone's different. So I could have 2 glasses of wine on an empty stomach and be completely destroyed, whereas someone could have just had a full meal, drunk wine, 2 glasses during the entire meal and hardly feels anything at the end of the meal. So it's really difficult to correspond that and to make any correlations with cannabis because, again, I could eat an edible on an empty stomach. I would feel nothing because it passed right through me into my liver and out. I'd say, like, where's the beef? But I could have a full meal, wait 10 minutes, eat that edible, and be completely destroyed.
Yeah, so
that's how it works. All
trial and error.
It's all on the liver. Because if you have a full meal and you let that digest, the next bit in your belly is going to actually affect you. It's not going to pass right through your liver to your intestines.
Do you know what I like about cannabis drinks when I go out and buy like a can from the local dispensary or something that's sort of pre-made, not something that I'm trying to infuse myself at home, but something that's coming. I will.
Get my book, Cannabis Cocktails. I teach you everything.
What I really like about going to get something that's already made for me and that's a can is that I can just sort of pop it open and it's already dosed.
Yeah, well, that's true, but there's a lot of fun in dosing it yourself. And I usually say if I'm really feeling like I want to get blasted, I'll use an ounce in a cup. It's usually 1 ounce of weed per 16 fluid ounces of liquid. So that's my measurement.
All right.
Or if you're putting it into a bottle of liquor, it's 750 a fifth, 750 ml. That's 1 ounce.
To 1 ounce of flour.
1 ounce of cannabis to a fifth. It's a good thing. But if you want to have just a really kind of light, kind of high, and it's okay, I would say don't use more than a quarter.
Good to know.
But if you want the full effect, use an ounce.
What do you think about this fairly new invention, I guess, which is a powder that you can sort of tip into different drinks?
Oh, my friend TJ makes a product called My High. I love it. I think it's fabulous. I mean, come on, it doesn't have any flavor. You've made a beautiful cocktail and you're adding in a nano emulsion, instant, dispersion, THC. I think it's brilliant to do that and let the drink speak for itself. It's not like you're going to be putting it in, I mean, people put it into seltzer water, but those are the same people that drink Tito's and cranberry juice.
No judgment. Drink what you want.
No judgment. It never was handmade.
That's a little bit of judgment, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I used to be a liquor guy, I can tell you that.
Yeah. The drinking culture for me has really changed from moving from England to America, from being in my 20s to being in my 30s. The drinking culture for me growing up was very much like you can go to the pub on a Sunday as a 14-year-old. Order yourself a half pint of beer. Nobody really looks twice,
My first experience with alcohol, I think I was 5 years old. I was in Spain with my family. We traveled extensively all the time. My mom had the travel bug and she grew up a millionaire, so she was able to do that. And we all went with her. So, culturally, it was a pretty amazing upbringing. So at 5, I was sitting at the Sandman bodega in Spain and they were drinking sherry and I was drinking sherry too.
That's sort of the norm in Europe. Like that's how I grew up too. If you want to try something at the table, you try something.
Yeah, exactly. Drink along with mom and dad. I remember being in France and drinking the hard ciders, and then when I went to England by myself, when I was in my late teens, I searched out all the Perrys and the ciders. I love those. And the English cider and the French cider are two different things, but they're made with the same ingredients.
I really miss cider. I really miss a good cider. Actually, now I'm in New England.
You have great cider in New Hampshire. You have fabulous cider, and I've also infused it with THC.
How do you infuse it?
Well, through the levo, of course. You put it in a little container and you let the cannabis sluice around in it for about an hour to 2, and then let it cool. Pour it in, strain it, pour it into a bottle, and then top it up with fresh cider, and it'll be perfect.
I'm going to do that. I do. I want to sit around a nice warm fire this winter
and drink hot cider that has weed in it.
Hot weed cider, yeah.
Cider.
I mean, I'm excited.
You're onto something right there. Or champagne velvets with float Guinness on top of it.
Oh my gosh, I love a Guinness. I love it when they float Guinness on top. The one thing that I will say is I worked in a bar in Texas. I lived in Dallas for a few years. It was called Sherlock's, and it was one of the busiest bars there was. And one of the things I learned about American drinking culture is that
it sucks.
Cocktails and libations are a big thing. Like they'll have a long list of cocktails at every bar you go to.
Right.
And I would love to have that same sort of knowledge and options at a bar somewhere sometime where I can do it without the hangover in the form of cannabis in my drink instead of alcohol.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a long ways off. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but that's why I came out with this, because you can take it and enjoy it, and it doesn't really give you any indication that it's cannabis other than that little thing right there.
That's true.
But it's kind of hidden, and it looks great in your hand. And when people open it and enjoy it, they're really pleasantly surprised, because the first thing they say is it's not a seltzer. It's a real drink. It really does attract I think, a more intellectual crew.
I like that. Well, thank you so much, Warren, for joining us.
Is it over already? You're kicking me off?
I wish I didn't.
It's only a half hour. I've been for like a year. I love talking to you. You're fabulous.
Oh, I wish I could talk longer.
Oh, darling, that's good. I'm glad.
Always honored to talk to you. It was a pleasure.
I'm glad.
A huge thanks to our guest, Warren Bobrow. Make sure to check out page 74 of the fall issue of Different Leaf, the magazine, to find Warren's delicious applesauce and Cannabutter hot chocolate recipe. You can order yourself a copy or find your nearest in-person retailer at differentleaf.com. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to include cannabis in weddings with Katie Shapiro.
You can have a beautiful chocolate that is 2.5 milligrams. And so, people can test the waters that way, especially, for any kind of new consumers that might be in attendance as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Microdose, go low, go slow. You've got newbies in the crowd,
right?
Even if you've been consuming for a very long time, right? Be sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening right now, and follow us on social media at Different Leaf. And I'm on social media at Brit the British. Check out differentleaf.com for all the issues of our gorgeous magazine. And make sure to go to xdifferentleaf.com to get signed up for our very cool new merch line. That's differentleaf.com and xdifferentleaf.com.